Welcome to the Thresholds of Reality, the podcast where we explore unexplained and mysterious events, phenomena, and legends. Today, I am joined by Mark Anthony. Mark is known as the Psychic Lawyer and has been seen on ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, and many other channels. He's an Oxford-educated trial attorney, licensed to practice law in Florida, Washington, D.C., and before the United States Supreme Court. He appears regularly on television as a legal analyst, psychic medium, and expert on the paranormal, after he himself had some near-death experiences. Today, we're going to explore all of these things and many more. So strap in as we explore the edges of the unknown. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate your time. I understand you're a lawyer, and I know how precious time is for lawyers. Every 6 minutes is a chunk of time, right? So it's a big pleasure for me to have you on the show.
Well, thank you, Sam. Yes, I practice law, but now I'm devoted my time exclusively to my spiritual work. And I appear on TV, radio, and at conferences nationwide as a paranormal expert, near-death experience researcher, psychic medium, ancient mysteries, and even legal analyst in high-profile cases. And I really appreciate being on a show where the host is an attorney. So we both understand the importance of evidence. I mean, unless you can produce evidence to substantiate your position, definitely in court, you're dead in the water. And as far as I'm concerned, as a psychic medium who communicates with spirits, if I can't get the spirits to produce evidence which can be objectively verified by the recipient, then that's an extremely important aspect of spirit communication and proving that it is legitimate.
Absolutely, that's a great point. And to that point, as far as evidence goes, that one of the things that we're looking at today is how do I know? Like I'm not someone who has, to my knowledge, I don't think I have ever had any sort of psychic experience. I've had deja vu occasionally, but I don't think I've ever had any run-ins with ghosts or any kind of psychic ability that I'm aware of. For me, I kind of come to this as like you said, it's like the lawyer. I need evidence. I need to see what people are doing, what evidence is out there. Is there a conflict between your background as a medium and your background as a lawyer, or do they kind of function hand in hand?
Well, before I get to that, let me ask you this. Lawyers, we love our questions. Have you ever had a dream where someone whom you love that has died communicates with you? Like you had a dream where you had a discussion with that person?
Not one time.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to have to work on that, Sam. Because what happens is a lot of times people inadvertently and unintentionally create a block. In my latest book, which is The Afterlife Frequency, and the subtitle is The Scientific Proof of Spiritual Contact and How That Awareness Will Change Your Life, I explain the scientific basis for spirit communication and not just mediumship, but also visitations when spirits come in a dream, when people feel a deceased loved one around. It also explains the basis of near-death experiences, shared death experiences, deathbed visions, and out-of-body experiences. And what this does is it also teaches people how to bring down the barriers. Because what happens is people can either be overly analytical or very demanding, like, I want a spiritual experience and I want it now. Yeah, and without meaning to. Or for those of you who have lost loved ones and you want the contact so badly and then wonder, why don't they come through to me? What's happening is you're inadvertently and unintentionally creating a negative energy barrier. It's like you're slamming the door in their face. it's when I'm doing a reading for somebody and I bring through a piece of evidence and I say, does that make sense? No, no, no. And they start shooting everything down.
Hmm.
And you have to realize that not everything is going to be immediately apparent. It may take time. I mean, and sometimes people get flustered, Sam. I was doing a session for this one lady, and I think it was her son that came through, and I said, I'm getting a name. It's a D name, a D name. No, no, his name was David. Now, how do you get more of a D name than David? She was so nervous and so flustered that she wasn't thinking clearly, and that too creates another block. So in my book, I introduce what's known as the raft technique, and we can talk about that in a bit, which will teach people who are not mediums how they can still have an experience. But your question was, do the careers of being an attorney and a psychic medium, do they somehow, are they diametrically opposed in some way? Well, when I was practicing law full time, this is part of my skill set. I was born with these abilities. Both my mother and my father had these abilities, and it runs for generations on both sides of the family. My dad was a NASA engineer, and before that, he was in the Navy. He was a Navy SEAL. Okay, dad was about as no nonsense a guy that you're going to get. My mom was an artist, commercial illustrator, and back when she was a teenager, she was a leg model for stockings because she had really great legs. Even up to the day she died, mom had great legs.
Oh, that's
And
great.
yeah, but see, the thing is, we were like the all-American family next door, sort of. And everybody in the neighborhood knew there was something different about that house. But the thing is, I was the first person to go public with these abilities. And I found that being a medium actually helped me in the practice of law. One of my first jobs, or rather my first job as an attorney, I was a prosecutor. And you probably remember when you get out of law school, the first job you get assigned all the grunt work, right?
Yeah, sure.
So here I am at they call it the state attorney's office in Florida. Other states call it the district attorney's office. It's the same thing. We're the prosecutors. We're the guys and the gals that we're in charge of bringing evidence against people who are arrested and accused of crimes. Well, one of the facets of that is doing first appearances. And a first appearance is when people get arrested, they have to be brought before a judge within 24 hours so the judge can determine if they should be held or released on bail. And when you're a prosecutor, fresh out of law school, you get stuck doing the weekend duty at the jail, and so I would be sitting at the prosecutor's table with another young prosecutor, and then there'd be the defense table, usually staffed by a public defender. So they'd bring people in that had been arrested. And so what I'd do, Sam, and I'd say, well, that one's charged with spouse battery. That one looks like a DUI. That one looks like a drug dealer. That one looks like a child molester. And my co-counsel would be looking at the police reports and saying, how do you know that? You haven't even seen the police report yet. And I'm like, well, just look at them. Well, people have been sitting in the drunk tank all night, have that grunged out, miserable look. And they all kind of, look the same. So
they all look guilty at that point.
Yeah, they all, yeah, no matter who you are, they could put, Prince Charles could be dragged in after spending the night and he'd look, guilty. But the thing is, it got to be a little thing in our office that see if Mark can figure out what someone's charged with before we show him the arrest report. And then certainly when I was selecting juries, it would give me insights on whether or not people were predisposed towards my position or against it. So it certainly has always been part of me and part of my skill set.
Now, I do have a question about kind of the functionality. So when you're looking at the people, you're getting a sense directly from them, or is it coming through, from a different source?
All right. In my first book, Never Letting Go, I tell a story about I was selecting a jury. Now I was on the defense side of things. I'd already been practicing law for about 3 or 4 years. and I was hired for this defense firm, and I was representing this big bruiser. He duked it out with this other guy in a bar, and my client beat the daylights out of the other guy, so the loser filed charges. So it was, it was a crime of violence. Big bruiser A beats up big bruiser B, and we're doing jury selection. The technical term is voir dire. Right. In Florida, they call it voir dire.
Voir dire.
Voir dire. But it's a French term which means to speak the truth. So the prosecution gets to go first, and you ask the prospective jury members whether or not they have any feelings, any particular way. So the point of jury selection is to select a fair and impartial jury. Well, while the prosecutor was asking questions, and this is before we ever started taking evidence, we're trying to get this big pool narrowed down to 6 people and 1 alternate for the trial. There's this one woman I kept getting drawn to, and I felt the presence of a female spirit with her, and I kept feeling this tightening around my throat, and it was really uncomfortable. So I knew that, okay, this woman that was associated with the spirit, the spirit must have died from some type of obstruction with her breathing, and it kept getting more and more intense. Well, then the judge says, defense counsel, now it's your time to do jury selection. So I stand up at the podium, and one of the first questions I ask, which is very standard in a criminal case, but I felt compelled to ask, was, has anyone on the jury panel, have you or has anyone in your family ever been the victim of a violent crime? Well, Sam, sure enough, that lady raises her hand. I'll never forget her. She had this olive complexion, these big dark eyes. She was an attractive, beautiful, sweet person, and the tears just start rolling out of her eyes, and she was trembling. And she said, a year ago, my sister was in a foreign country when an escaped mental patient strangled her and then dismembered her body and threw her in a dumpster like she was garbage.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. I'm standing there at the podium. The only thing, you could hear a pin drop in the courtroom, because even the prosecutor was like really annoying, couldn't even think of anything to say. And I hear my client like, dude,
let's excuse her.
What are you doing? And then I'm really starting to get a visual on the spirit. Now I know why I was feeling the tightening around my throat, because she was strangled, and I literally had a foot in this world and the other side. And if your listeners want to find out what happens, you're going to have to get my book, Never Letting Go.
Yeah. Okay. So was that like a sympathetic feeling you were having, or was it something that
was full-blown mediumship
pressing on you?
Yeah, full-blown mediumship. When I communicate with spirits, everything is about tuning into frequency. That's why the new book, The Afterlife Frequency, because I wanted to explain to people in 21st century terms how all of this works. And it's not some dry, boring technical treatise. I mean, look, Sam, you and I suffered through enough boring books in law school. And in the practice of law, you read these opinions that judges write. Well, maybe they have a brilliant legal mind, maybe. But a lot of them have no gift for writing anything that can keep you awake. And certainly I understand judges are very busy and they're under the gun and all this to crank out the decisions. But the way I write is I explain the science, I explain the technical aspects, but I illustrate everything with fast moving, with emotional, with stories that make, I try to write my books like it's a novel, even though it's nonfiction.
Right.
And so when I open up my brain to the afterlife frequency, I'm able to enhance my brainwave frequency. Spirits are able to spot that. They bring their frequency down. We get a frequency match. And then they start transmitting to me all types of information. So spirits are pure electromagnetic energy, and they're emitting waves of frequency, and the electromagnetic impulses from the spirit interphase with the electrical system in my brain, and then that gets converted into recognizable concepts based on my memories, feelings, and cultural associations. So, with the case with the jury, the spirit of that woman's sister knew that I was a medium and that I was a conduit to get a message through to her, so began emitting these waves of frequencies. So I will see things, hear things, feel things, know things. I'll taste. I'll get tastes. I'll get senses. And so one of the first things spirits give me will be their gender, and then usually how they died. And that's exactly what was happening there. So that is a very condensed version of what goes on with me when a spirit aligns his or her or their, because there could be more than one, vibrational frequency with my brainwave frequency.
Okay. So you're looking at it from, it's kind of a meeting in the middle. It's not something, it's part sympathetic and part projection from the spirit.
When you say sympathetic, define sympathetic.
So sympathetic is you sort of receiving or passively matching your feeling, your experience to the spirits.
Well, that's what they do is when they're emitting those waves of frequency to me, that we have two receptor areas in our body, two psychic receptor areas. One is just below the rib cage. It's called the solar plexus. You know, for people that do yoga, there's 7 chakras in the body, and there's the yellow chakra, which is the solar plexus. You know, it's really fascinating. Hindus in India that developed yoga determined the location of the chakras 5,000 years ago. Well, these chakras happen to coincide with the location of the 7 endocrine glands in our body, all of which operate on chemical and electrical impulses. And the solar plexus, which is it's right, you know, just below the rib cage, and it's called solar plexus because it looks like the rays of the sun. The nerves are emanating from it, and it's the second most complex bundle of nerves in the body outside of the cerebral cortex. And the solar plexus is where we get that gut feeling. All right, Sam, ever had a gut feeling about a situation?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
all right.
Sure.
Now, you said you never experienced a psychic experience. Well, you have that gut feeling. All right. So now we know. So I knew we were going to get to this, Sam. All right. So yeah, a good trial lawyer relies on his or her gut, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. That is a form of psychic activity. For people who are parents, all of a sudden you get this feeling about your child, and then you get the call. Like, you know, Mom, I was just in an accident, or hopefully nothing terrible happened. And that's because the solar plexus, being a extremely active electromagnetic center in your body, picks up on the denser, lower vibrations. That's why we get feelings. So when a spirit's emitting frequency to me, one of the things that I pick up is how they died. And so, yes, from sympathetic, because that's how my body, my sympathetic nervous system will respond. Then there's the pineal gland in the brain. That's about 4 inches behind the center of the forehead, which, according to the yogis, is the third eye chakra. And here's what's fascinating about the pineal gland. It's bigger than a grain of rice, smaller than a lima bean. It is the least understood gland in the body and one of the most studied. Recent British, Israeli, French, and German studies have located calcite and magnetite crystals inside of the pineal gland. What was the first radio? A piece of quartz crystal with a copper wire running low levels of electricity into it. The pineal gland secretes the hormone melatonin. It regulates our reticular activating system and our circadian rhythms, when we're tired, when we're hungry, that's also why you have jet lag, because it's tuned into the Earth's electromagnetic fields. And then when also we jump in a plane and we're 3 time zones away, and then you're tired and you're like, well, gee, I slept on the plane. Why doesn't it just, it takes time for your body to regulate to this. It also regulates your perception of light, which is a huge component of spirituality, and it controls your brain wave frequencies. We have 5 brainwave frequencies: gamma, beta, alpha, theta, delta. Gamma, that's like when we're preparing for trial. Okay,
Okay.
gamma is when you're running the brain at full throttle. Beta, that's in the state we're in now. That's the activities of daily living state. Alpha, that's the groovy state. It's when you kind of daydream, you meditate, you're drifting off to sleep. Theta is the sleep where you dream. Delta, very low brainwave activity, but delta is where you heal, you fight infections, cells regenerate. But it is on the alpha theta border where psychic and mediumistic activity occurs. And I've been brain mapped, and a number of my colleagues, we've been studying where they plug all this stuff in, and then we do readings and they see where the activity occurs. But normally, Sam, it takes several hours. You go to sleep and you get to the alpha theta border. But for some reason, what makes me a medium, and we're still not sure why this is, I can go from beta to alpha theta within seconds. So essentially, I can just turn it on, and conversely have to turn it off because you really don't want to be open all the time. So think of the other side, the afterlife frequency as FM radio, higher frequency, our world as AM radio. Okay. Ever been driving down a highway, you're listening to an FM station, and maybe you pass an AM radio station along the highway, and all of a sudden you get overlap, all right? Well, it's the same thing here. There's the afterlife frequency, there's our material world dimension, so the spirit will start to lower their vibrational frequency. We raise ours, you get the frequency match, and there's where the spirit contact occurs. So it's in a zone in between the two dimensions, which is why I refer to mediumship as interdimensional communication, because that's what I'm doing, is I am communicating with another dimension. None of this is hocus pocus. None of this is magic. It is all based on energy and frequency alignment and is explainable through quantum physics.
Okay. So one of the things that I've asked another psychic is what muscle is it that you're flexing? I don't think that's a muscle. I know how to flex. What's the process like? Is there a feeling or a sensation or even a physical stimuli that you employ to achieve that switching between the different phases?
I ask for it. And I let the spirits know I'm doing this or I'm not doing this. I always run into young mediums. Oh, spirits come to me all the time. It's like, really? Do you leave the doors and windows of your house open 24/7? Do you want to be constantly bombarded? Look, but by doing that, you're degrading the quality of the contact. Plus, you need to set the parameters with the spirits, like letting them know when I'm receptive and when I'm not, and they're going to work with you. So
that's very familiar to me with clients. It's like, hey, you pick your clients, you set parameters, set expectations. You don't get my cell phone number. You can call me.
I remember I made the mistake once of telling this one client, well, if you need to call me at 3 a.m. I can't sleep. I'm nervous.
Yeah. Don't do that.
What do you want me to do? Are you in jail? No. Then take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning. And not to be facetious, but the thing is, you have to, with law clients or any type of clients, and with spirits, you have to define the parameters of the contact. But see, that's still what we're not sure is how we are able to do this. Now, for me, I start all of my sessions with a prayer. And I have a specific prayer. It's the prayer of St. Francis. And so when I do that, that's sort of me shooting a flare into the cosmos. They know that. Okay, they spot it and they come in. Now, that doesn't mean that I won't be somewhere and a spirit will come with me and start sending messages to me. I've been in grocery stores and things, and I start picking up on spirits around people. A lot of these TV shows, people run and go, hi, I'm a medium, fling a reading at somebody who's picking out cabbages in the produce department. But the thing is that that person was there to pick out cabbages at the produce department. They were not there to deal with grief issues, and they were not there to have a reading. So while that may make for good entertainment value, it is highly unethical. That's like going up to someone and saying, "I'm a dentist. Here, hold that," and then holding someone down and then extracting one of their molars with a pair of pliers.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So one of the things that you mentioned briefly was you had your brain mapped, and this kind of relates to another question that I've had. So Kyle is my usual co-host. Unfortunately, couldn't be here, but he has experienced many ghost encounters, spirit encounters, and to the extent that he's getting kind of mischievous, poltergeisty type spirits in his house that move things around. And we came up with a brilliant idea. Hey, let's try and record them. And so we set up a camera, and then all the activity, all the spiritual activity in his house immediately stopped. Says he hasn't had any experiences since they put up the camera.
Well, you set the parameters. And a lot of people go, "Oh, the spirits are on. Tell them to leave." What? Tell them to leave.
Yeah, I don't think he wants them to leave. I think he enjoys their presence, but
a lot of people do. I mean, people are like, "Would you spend a night in a haunted house?" It's like, "Have you been me?" It's like it's like, I mean, I had a mother and father that could see spirits, and to me, it's not weird. To me, it's neither paranormal or supernatural. It's a normal part of nature. And it's like any other skill. Not everybody has it, but everybody has the potential to experience it in some part.
Can you still hear me? Okay. Is it possible for electromagnetic fields to interfere with the spirit's activity that Kyle might perceive normally, that you might perceive normally?
Theoretically, I do believe that's possible, because a lot of people say that, well, all right, I developed a term called the electromagnetic soul in my book, The Afterlife Frequency. And a lot of scientists have started using that term. They're calling it the EMS, which is really quite an honor. And I'm very, very honored, very humbled. And in a nutshell, every great spiritual teacher from ancient India through Zoroaster, Buddha, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, spirituality of Native America, the Pacific, all teach that the who and what we are, the soul, the consciousness, pre-exists the body, comes into the body, moves on after the body dies. We know from the field of neuroscience that the body has an electrical field, and the brain, which is only 2% of the body's weight, consumes 20% of the energy, of the electrical energy used by the body. So we got a lot going on here. The brain's a hard drive. It didn't create the soul, it merely hosts it. And the laws of thermodynamics teach what? Energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. So I created the term an electromagnetic soul to explain what we really are, which is pure consciousness, that is eternal electromagnetic energy. And it is possible that there are types of energy which can block the contact. People that are overly analytical, people that reject the contact, you're creating waves of frequency which will block it. Then other people, other critics, cynics, say that, well, why not just use an electroencephalogram, an EEG, or a QEEG, a quantitative electroencephalogram, to detect the electromagnetic soul. And while that may seem on its face to be a good argument, and I specialized in head injury litigation when I was practicing law, and let me tell you, I've dealt quite a bit with QEEGs, EEGs, PETs, positronic emission tomography. The thing is, those are good diagnostic tools for injuries, but they are not sensitive enough to the ultra high frequencies, which may be beyond mind-brain interaction. But this year, in February of 2022, something happened which has got neuroscientists worldwide thinking very heavily, is that there was an 87-year-old man in Tartu, Estonia. He had a massive heart attack, and so his family rushed him to the no, he had a stroke, and his family rushed him to a hospital, and they had him on an EEG, an electroencephalogram, because they were monitoring his brainwave frequencies and electrical activity in his brain. And then while they were examining him, he had a massive heart attack and died. And this is the first time in history that somebody was hooked up to an EEG at the moment of death. And what the doctors saw has just rocked their world. Every one of the 5 brainwave frequencies went off the charts. Gamma, beta, alpha, theta, delta, just this surge of activity, to the point where a couple different, the doctors that experienced this and some of their colleagues wrote a report that said perhaps this could be evidence of the proverbial life review that occurs in a near-death experience when somebody dies. My theory, and I'm going to be presenting this at the International Association for Near-Death Studies annual conference between August 31st and September 4th, IANS, International Association for Near-Death Studies annual conference in Salt Lake City, is that when the electromagnetic soul is getting ready to leave the body, there's this expansion of energy. Think about when you see an incandescent light bulb right before it burns out and there's a flash.
Mm-hmm.
Why did that happen? Well, the filament in the incandescent bulb is comprised of the metal tungsten. And when all is well, the tungsten can handle and regulate the amount of electricity flowing through the light bulb. When your brain is healthy and able to regulate the amount of electricity through it, everything's fine. But as the brain degrades and is no longer able to regulate and control that amount of energy, there's a spike. And I believe that my electromagnetic soul theory not only explains that, but also other aspects of a near-death experience, shared death experience, as well as mediumship. So we're on the threshold, Sam, of an exciting era of new discoveries in survival of consciousness and afterlife research.
Well, that is very exciting. It sounds like the kind of thing that may prompt some intense studies and maybe the creation of new technologies to help us understand that particular moment. I've always wondered, is that transition, does our perception of time get affected during that transition between life and death, so that review of our life, my life flashed before my eyes while we're experiencing it, the perception of it is much longer, but for outsiders, it does seem like a flash or like a snap of time.
Yes, it does. And I believe I have an explanation for that. We know from grade school science, everything's made of molecules, right?
Right.
And molecules are comprised of what? Atoms. Atoms, in turn, are made of electrons, protons, and neutrons. And they, in turn, are comprised of a smaller unit of electromagnetic energy known as a quantum. And that's where the term quantum physics comes from. And for all the physics people listening there, yes, electrons are technically a quantum because an electron is 1/1800th the size of a proton. So I just want to make sure I make the physics people happy. All right. So here we are on the most basic level, Sam. And this is where there's no longer a distinction between biology and physics and chemistry. See, traditionally, biology is the study of organic matter. Physics and chemistry is the study of chemicals and inorganic matter and energy. And they've been put into separate camps. But on the subatomic level, everything is made of a quantum. So, this computer mouse that I'm holding is on the subatomic level made of the same energy that you and I are. The
Right.
same energy that this show is being broadcast on, which is radio waves, the same energy that creates the surface of Mars and the distance between the stars. But it's that everything also has a different frequency and a different vibration. So you and I, we're alive, we're animate, so we have a higher vibrational frequency than an inanimate object. Albert Einstein and the whole crew of the early quantum physicists from the late 19th and early 20th centuries up until now theorized, and this is part of Albert Einstein's theory of relativity, which talk about trying to wrap your head around something. On the quantum level, time does not exist. The past, the present, and the future are just as real. I mean, as in other words, it's all going on at one time. So that is why, in a situation like you asked about, it may seem like a second to the to observers, but an entire life review of someone who experiences it. This would also account for how spirits can see future events. For example, I was doing a reading for this lady, and her mother's spirit came through and began to talk to me about her nephew. Now, her nephew's alive, but I said that your mother's spirit says that your nephew is having issues with his eyes, and you got to get him to the eye doctor. And she said, well, I'm really close to my sister and her son, my nephew, and he has been complaining about blurred vision. He was only 7 years old. And I said, okay. And now I'm hearing Little Richard singing Tutti Frutti, ah Rudy, Tutti Frutti, ah Rudy. And she goes, well, that doesn't make any sense. And I go, are you a Little Richard fan? She goes, not at all. I said, okay, well, that's what I'm getting. 2 weeks later, I get an email. Mark, I called my sister and said that we got to take him to the eye doctor. And she said, okay. So we make an appointment. We go to the doctor's office. Here I am with my sister and my 7-year-old nephew. We open the door to the doctor's office, and playing on the radio is Tutti Frutti, Ah Rudy by Little Richard.
No way. That's amazing.
Oh, it's like I get emails like this all the time. Now I like this example because first off, spirits move at the speed of light. Electromagnetic soul, everything in the EM band moves at 186,282 miles per second, speed of light. So Grandma's spirit knows her grandson needs glasses. He's got blurry vision, and she's like, you better take him there. Okay. She can also see future events. Radio waves are what? They're also a form of electromagnetic energy. So she was able to say, take him to the eye doctor, and to prove that you're doing the right thing, I'm going to give you the song that you're going to hear the second you walk in. Because when people say, oh, you're cold reading, really? What are the odds that out of all the songs in the world that the spirit would transmit to me the one that would be playing when they got there, and it wasn't by an artist that they were fans of? So it wasn't like, oh, they're country people, so it must be a Travis Tritt song. No. And so when things like this happen, this is evidence. And this is how, when we meaning mediums, receive pieces of evidence transmitted from a spirit, which can be verified, maybe not right away, but in time, this guarantees the sincerity and the genuineness of the contact.
That's fantastic. I do have a question, though, about how people can tell when they're having an experience like that, or if it's generated from within. My mom, for example, she often tells us about, so there's a lot of kids in my family, but we have a brother who passed away in infancy, and she often thinks about him and has told us on several occasions that she's had communication with him. She's talked to him. She has a sense of what he would have looked like as an adult. She also talks about having experiences like that with her father, where her dad shows up and they communicate. I've never had anything like that. to my knowledge, right? Maybe I have, and I just don't know what it is I'm looking for. How do you know what types of experiences are coming from within, and what time and what types of experiences are that matching of frequencies?
I was trying to figure out how to explain to people who aren't mediums that very question. And I was here in my office, and I was working on the Afterlife Frequency, and I hit the dreaded writer's block. And I've written 3 books. I'm a columnist for Best Holistic Life magazine. I write. And writer's block. And the thing about writer's block, Sam, it always seems to hit you when you've scheduled the entire day off just to work on this. So I'm here in my office, nothing, nada. I live near the ocean, so I figured I'd go take a walk by the beach because that always clears my head. So I'm heading down my driveway, and all of a sudden I get cold chills and tingles. All right, sign 1. That's electromagnetic activity. I said, okay, there's some spirits. And it's Florida, all right? So it wasn't like it was cold out. It was hot. But I got directed to go in the opposite direction, away from the beach, down this path, this bike path. So it's around 11 in the morning, walking on the bike path, and suddenly I see these 2 objects shining in the light. And I look at them, and it's a nickel and a penny. And I go to pick them up, and I hear my mom's voice. Both my parents have passed. And my mom's family was Italian, and I love the Italian side of the family. Great food, great food. But I hear my mom's voice, if their head's down, it's bad luck. And I'm laughing because the Italian side of the family seems to have a superstition for all occasions. They'll have a black cat, watch out for don't walk under a ladder, all that stuff. And then I hear Dad's voice, it's money, grab it. So I'm laughing, and here I am. I pick them up, and I'm looking in the palm of my hand. I go, 6 cents. And all of a sudden I go, wait a second, 6 cents. Sam, the cold chills enveloped me. And then I saw a vision of my father standing in the ocean holding this blue canvas raft that we used to ride waves on. Now, Dad had been a Navy SEAL. He was a scuba diver. He was a swimming instructor at the Y. He probably taught like 100, 200 kids to swim in his lifetime. And I'm like, a raft. And then I hear my parents' voices in unison teach people to recognize signs from spirits, accept the contact is real, feel it without overthinking it, trust the message. RAFT, raft. Oh my gosh. So I ran home, and I wrote all this out, and I teach people in the Afterlife Frequency some exercises to help do this because they walked me through it. I got the cold chills and tingles. I saw the coins, heard their voices, so I recognized the signs from them. I accepted it as real. It's the 3rd step, the F word, the feeling without overthinking. And Sam, this may be the issue with you. As lawyers, we are taught to be analytical and to overthink situations, which is an important skill set in the practice of law. But in spirit communication, you have to feel, not think, feel. And that's where most people will go wrong. They will overthink it. They will immediately reject it. Oh, it must be my imagination, or I want it. Okay. I want it. And because I've noticed several times, I've never had this experience. How about changing it to, I'm looking forward to having this experience? You see, you're shifting the negativity, the electromagnetic field, and then trust. Trust is very important as well. All 4 aspects of RAPT are, but trusting. We live in a really bizarre time in human history where there's people going around putting on bomb vests and blowing up children saying God has told them to do this. It's a message from spirits, or people that start civil disorder and things. And, I want to get into the politics, but messages from spirits, which are messages from the divine, because we're all cells in the body of the energy that dare I say it, we call God, are never about anger, bigotry, hatred, or violence. They are about love, healing, peace, protection, and resolution. And that's how you know when you're receiving a message from a spirit. So when your mother feels the spirit of your little brother, did he die from issue with the lungs, like his lungs collapsed, lungs filled up with fluid?
Holy crap! Yes, he
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, so he's coming through, and he's explaining that your mother has always had this very tight connection with him. And, he said that despite everyone's best efforts, he never really had a chance, and that his death was the catalyst for your mother's heart to be open even more, and that she's an extremely compassionate, caring, and sensitive person who will put the well-being of others before herself. And that she said that out of all her children, your brother saying, your infant brother saying, out of all her children, you're the one that is the pillar. You're the pillar, because you're the one that everyone leans on for advice, for guidance, and for strength. And it is because of this strength of character, which you have to have, it is also part of what's causing the block to spiritual communication. And that by now inviting the energy of loved ones and spirits to come forward while maintaining your strength, you will now begin to receive messages.
Okay, that was incredible. Yeah, he's actually
Johnny?
my mom's.
Johnny? Who's
What's
Johnny?
that?
Who's Johnny?
So,
I mean, I know
don't
we
know.
all know John's, but there's somebody in spirits talking to you about Johnny.
Johnny. My brother's name is Joseph.
Joseph, the one that passed?
Yeah, he died at less than a day old because he was born premature. His lungs hadn't fully formed, and that was the problem, is that his lungs hadn't fully formed. He never really had a chance, like you said.
It's funny because, all right, with names, and I'm not trying to stretch and make it fit, but Johnny and Joey, because a lot of times when I hear names, they can be very close. Like recently, I did a reading for this lady from Bulgaria. My clientele is worldwide. And it's so funny because her uncle's spirit came through, and I don't speak a lick of Bulgarian. I speak a little French, a little Spanish, a little German, some Japanese, but I'm hearing the word incidental. And I say, incidental? And she bursts out laughing, and she said his name in Bulgarian. And by God, if it didn't sound like incidental, it was like incidentale, whatever it was. And she goes, Mark, I think that's it. I go, yeah, I'm thinking that's it too. So when I'm hearing Johnny, it could be Joey as well. And I realized that he passed very quickly, but that his life was short, but it had purpose.
Yeah,
Because his death, everyone matters, everyone counts, and even a baby counts and matters, because look at the concentric circles from that pebble falling in the water has created within your own family.
yeah, absolutely. That idea that my mom opened her heart to more. So my mom had 9 children, including my brother who died.
Wow.
And before she had me and my 2 little brothers, she was thinking of calling it a day. And then after, most of my siblings are about 2 years apart. Joseph would have been 50 this year, I think. Anyway, she decided to go ahead and have as many more kids as she could, and which ended up being 3 more. That's amazing. Oh my gosh. I wasn't expecting that.
Well, I wasn't either. And this, because we were talking about earlier, it's like, well, how do you know when it happens? All of a sudden, it's like, it happened. Well, because first off, we're talking about this, we're conducive to it. You mentioned your brother, and all of a sudden, the cold chills and tingles start flowing through me, and I'm like, oh, okay. And I immediately felt my lungs, and I saw like deflated lungs filled with fluid.
Yeah.
And so then that's how, and then once you establish, once I got the positive confirmation on that, he locked onto me and then gave me the messages for you and for your mother.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Well, it's my honor. It's I'm honored to be able to do that. And it's fascinating because spirits are always listening. And you were asking, well, how does it work? And well, now you know.
That's incredible. Thank you. Wow. Wow. Where do I go from here?
I could tell a fun story.
Yeah, that'd be great.
For the benefit of the audience, today is the day that we're recording this is the 60th anniversary of Marilyn Monroe's death. And everyone knows who Marilyn Monroe is. She's just like one of those icons. Well, a few years ago, I was in upper state New York, and I was on tour, and I was with my manager, Rocky. She travels with me, and she's on the phone, and she goes, "When? Are you serious? Now?" And she goes, "Mark, Shirley MacLaine, the movie star, the icon, is on, her assistant is on the phone, and she wants you to be on her radio show." And I go, "When?" She goes, "Now." And I'm like, "Now?" And so we're in this hotel in Boston, and I'm on the phone, and "Please stand by for Ms. MacLaine." And there's Shirley MacLaine. And Shirley MacLaine was the first major celebrity to go public with her beliefs in reincarnation, psychic phenomenon, past life regressions, UFOs. She really, and her book was called Out on a Limb. And what's really cool is when she was on the Out on a Limb tour back in, I think it was in the 1980s, my mother, who was a medium, was a big Shirley MacLaine fan, went to see her, and she was given a whole day seminar. And there was a break, and Mom was doing little mini readings on people in the crowd. Well, the crowd parts. My dad was with her. He goes, the crowd parted like it was the Red Sea or something. And Shirley MacLaine walks up to my mother and says, "I hear you're the one I should see." So my mother did this reading on Shirley MacLaine. And I remember, and I was a kid, I was a young guy. And I asked her, I said, so what did you get? What happened? She goes, "I'm not telling you, Mark. That's a secret between me and Shirley." So Mom never told me that. So here I am, years, like almost 30 years later, and Shirley's interviewing me. We had such a wonderful time, and we were talking about quantum physics, and I mentioned Stephen Hawking. And Shirley said, well, at the time, Stephen Hawking was still alive because he died a couple years ago. And Shirley said, "Well, Stephen was a friend of mine." And I'm like, "You are friends with Stephen Hawking?" And she said, "I was in his office." And she said, "Actually, Stephen did believe in God. The media said he was an atheist, but he believed in energy. Like he believed like Nikola Tesla, like what one person calls God, another calls the laws of physics." And behind his desk were two photos on the wall, one of Albert Einstein and one of Marilyn Monroe. And she said, "Stephen, I understand Einstein, but why Marilyn?" All right, so we're on the air, Sam. And she imitates his voice. "Because her curves are more beautiful than a quantum singularity." And I'm laughing, and I said, "Well, did you ever meet Marilyn?" She goes, "Marilyn Monroe was my friend." I go, "Really?" And she said that it was very difficult for Marilyn and I because back in the 50s, the studios used to play us off against each other. They would threaten each other, like, "Well, we'll give this part and that part." And she said that, that famous when Marilyn sang "Happy Birthday" to President John F. Kennedy. Well, Shirley was there that night because she was part of the Rat Pack, which was Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Peter Lawford, who was JFK's brother-in-law, Sammy Davis Jr., Joey Bishop. Anyway, Marilyn threw a fit and wouldn't get into that dress. And the producer said, "Well, that's fine because Shirley MacLaine's out in the audience and she's your size. We'll put her in it." "Fine, I'll do it." So Marilyn went ahead and did this. And so Shirley's telling me this, and then she said, but then everything changed after that because Shirley MacLaine got the part in this movie called The Apartment. And that catapulted her from a B-list to being an A-list celebrity. And she said, so there I am in Hollywood at the red carpet event, Grumman's Chinese Theater premiere for The Apartment, and Marilyn Monroe shows up. And Marilyn is wearing a full-length fur coat. And Shirley MacLaine said, we're all wondering, why is Marilyn wearing a fur coat? It's LA, it's hot. And so during the premiere, Marilyn gets up and goes to the bar and she's having a drink. Shirley goes out and said, well, Marilyn, is there a problem? What's going on? And she said, Marilyn didn't say a word. She just turned to me and opened up her fur coat and she was stark naked underneath. And then Shirley MacLaine says, and now that I look back, Stephen Hawking had a point. So I'm laughing and I go, God, I wonder what Marilyn would say about that. And all of a sudden she goes, well, you're the medium. You tell me. Okay, I mean, talk about pressure. I mean, here is not just an Academy Award winning legendary actress, right, but a major spiritual icon. But in going through the process, I couldn't get flustered, took a deep breath, relaxed. I opened up to frequency, and Marilyn comes through, and I describe her. And it was fascinating what she said. She said that I was jealous of you, Shirley, because you could just walk through, you could glide through a crowd with such grace and elegance. And I felt garish. And I couldn't stand the way people stared at me and were always talking about me. And Shirley said, did she kill herself? And Marilyn said, no. She said, I was very depressed. I couldn't take it anymore. And Shirley said, well, I kind of figured that she didn't, but I wanted to hear it. I said, but she has another message for you. And she said, what's that, Mark? She said, thank you. Thank you for taking the high road. Thank you for not doing it. And I was like, well, this doesn't make any sense. And Shirley goes, oh, my goodness. I'm so glad to hear that. I go, what? She said, well, when Marilyn died, she had been working on a movie. And the studio came to me and said, well, you know, we're working on this production with Marilyn, so we can just cut her out of it and we'll reshoot the scenes with you instead in it. We'll just recast that for you. And Shirley said, no, I will not do that to my friend. I won't do it. And so she received the confirmation from that. And then I said, well, there's another spirit. Wow. I go, this woman's beautiful too. Great skin, dark hair. Gosh, she has the most incredible eyes. They're almost like violet. And before I could say anything, Shirley goes, oh, Elizabeth Taylor was my best friend. And Sam, it was at that moment I realized that I am on the phone doing a reading for Shirley MacLaine while I am communicating with the spirits of Elizabeth Taylor and Marilyn Monroe.
Wow.
I don't know if I am ever going to top that one.
Well, I don't know either, but this was a fantastic experience for me today. Mark, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on the show. You know, now that I'm thinking about it, I used to be like a missionary for my church, and I do think I did have an experience.
Sure you did.
While I was on a mission for my church where I might have gotten some hints. I might have gotten some inside information, and it felt very much like this experience today.
There you go. And see, now when you start looking back, you're going to see more and more of that. And now from here on, you'll be more attuned to it. You know, we're all a work in progress. We are all on our own spiritual journeys. And, you know, part of your ministry, if you will, is this show, is because you're bringing to light different forms of paranormal, or what some people consider to be paranormal or supernatural phenomenon. And I know that scary sells, and lots of people like the scary aspect, but the more that we study it, we find that it really isn't scary. People fear the unknown. And when you begin to understand something and it loses the mysterious aspect, it becomes something not to be afraid of. And that's the same thing in spirit communication. I believe that it's a gift from God to help us understand that the afterlife exists, that souls, our electromagnetic souls, are immortal living beings, that we can communicate with souls, and that we'll be reunited with our loved ones in the light when it's our time to leave. Because the hardest thing in losing somebody that we love is thinking that that person that meant so much to us, even a baby that barely made it into this world, but still that bond, that love is there, that person disintegrated into nothingness. And the truth is they haven't, and
Right.
we never do, because energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another.
That's beautiful. And I'm definitely picking up that book. That was amazing. This is amazing. Well, so for everyone watching the program, watching the show today, please make sure that you comment. I want to hear your comments and uh, let us know how you felt about the show. If you feel like we've earned your subscription, please subscribe and make sure that you tune into this guy. Make sure you check out Mark Anthony. Can you hold up the book one more time so we can get it?
And if people want to find out about my book, it's on sale worldwide, but also visit my website, which is afterlifefrequency.com. I wanted to make it easy, for everybody. And I have a number of online spirit communication events coming up. This year, I'll be speaking in August at Helping Parents Heal's annual convention in Phoenix over Labor Day weekend. In the first weekend of September, I'm the keynote speaker at the International Association for Near-Death Studies in Salt Lake City. And in October, I will be a keynote speaker at the Edgar Cayce Association for Research Enlightenment's Ancient Mysteries Conference. Plus, I do have a lot of online events through brightlive.com, light circles, which are limited to 6 people. That way, everyone's guaranteed a reading. And every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, I'm the co-host of The Psychic and the Doc on the Transformation Network. And my co-host, Dr. Pat Basili, is a world-renowned behavioral psychologist. So you get the psychic and the psychology all in one. And we take calls from listeners. Sam, I really want to thank you for having me as your guest. I hope sometime that I can return, and I look forward to meeting Kyle at some point. And for all the listeners, please keep tuning in to Thresholds of Reality. I'm Mark Anthony. God bless.